I know the feeling. You scroll through a dozen glossy photos, every grill looks like it could turn your backyard into a 5-star steakhouse, but the moment you fire it up the heat is uneven, the sear is weak, and you're left wondering if you just bought a pricey patio ornament. That hesitation is why I'm doing this deep dive, because a gas grill is the biggest piece of equipment most of us bring into an outdoor kitchen, and a misstep can leave you with a half-baked hobby instead of reliable weekend meals. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's step back and talk about what really matters in a mid-range gas grill. You want burners that keep pressure stable so the flame doesn't sputter when you open the lid, grates that hold heat long enough to give a proper crust, and a layout that lets you handle more than a single burger at a time. You also want something that doesn't demand a full-time mechanic when a part wears out. Those are the criteria I used when I started comparing a handful of 4-burner models, and the Weber Genesis E430 Stealth Edition kept popping up because it checks most of those boxes on paper. What makes the Genesis different from the average 4-burner is the combination of PureBlu tapered burners and a dedicated sear zone. PureBlu isn't just a marketing buzzword. The tapered design actually means the gas flow stays consistent from the valve to the flame. In practice, that translates to fewer hot spots and a flame that stays steady even when you crank the knob up to high. I tested the burners by cooking a batch of chicken thighs on medium-high for 15 minutes. The thighs browned uniformly, and I didn't have to shuffle them around to chase a cooler spot. That kind of consistency is a big win for anyone who wants to grill a mix of proteins without constantly playing the temperature roulette. The sear zone is another practical highlight. Weber claims it can deliver up to 50% more power than the regular burners, and the extra-large surface area lets you lay down 2 ribeye steaks side by side and still get a proper crust on each. I tried it with a pair of 1-inch thick ribeyes, searing each side for just 2 minutes. The meat developed that classic caramelized crust while staying pink in the middle, exactly the result you get from a professional grill. If you're the type who hosts a weekend barbecue and wants to impress with a steakhouse finish, that dedicated zone saves you from having to juggle the grill's heat manually. Now, the grates. The Genesis uses Porcelain-Enameled, cast iron grates. Cast iron is famous for heat retention, but the porcelain coating prevents the iron from rusting and makes cleanup far less painful. After searing the steaks, I brushed the grates with a silicone brush, wiped them down, and there was barely a trace of residue. For anyone who has spent an hour scrubbing stubborn grill marks, that ease of cleaning is a real quality-of-life upgrade. Aesthetic-wise, the Stealth Edition is all black, which gives it a sleek, almost futuristic look. That's great if you want the grill to blend seamlessly with a modern patio or a darker stone countertop. The trade-off, however, is that fingerprints and dust are more visible than on a classic stainless steel finish. If you're meticulous about keeping the grill spotless, you'll find yourself wiping it down a bit more often. The included Weber-crafted frame kit is a subtle but handy addition. It's a modular frame that lets you attach Weber's line of accessories like a side burner, a smoker box, or a rotisserie without having to buy a completely new grill. That flexibility is useful for folks who start simple and gradually expand their outdoor cooking repertoire. On the flip side, the frame adds a few extra pounds to the overall unit. The Genesis weighs enough that moving it once it's set up is a chore. If you live in a small balcony or need a grill you can store away at the end of the season, you might find the weight and footprint a bit cumbersome. Speaking of size, the Genesis is a 4-burner with a fairly generous cooking area, but it's still compact enough to fit into most mid-sized patios. The main cooking surface is roughly 424 square inches, with the sear zone taking up a good chunk of that. The downside is that the total footprint, including the frame, can be a challenge if you have a tight corner or a shared garden.